Hello there, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Andrew Fennell over at IMPLAN, and I'll be leading today's webinar. We're just going to take a few moments here to let everyone join the call and get situated. So we'll be starting shortly, but again, thanks for attending. All right, then we'll go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Andrew Fennell, and thanks everyone for attending today's webinar in our webinar series. Today we're going to be presenting a little bit on negotiation tools, which are something you can use in your economic and fiscal analysis with IMPLAN, particularly with the fiscal piece of things today, talking about digging into the tax impact reports with IMPLAN. And specifically on today's talk, we're going to be looking at the direct, indirect, and induced, as well as the total taxes in IMPLAN, and what those really represent, what those really mean in an analysis behind those three words, really, the direct, indirect, and induced. So again, I'm presenting today here at IMPLAN. My name is Andrew, and I originally got my undergraduate degree in agricultural economics from the University of Georgia, but I've been working here at IMPLAN for a little over 5 years now. Just in terms of leading the call today and kind of how we'll roll through the presentation is, you do have the ability to raise your hand and even ask questions in the questions box here in the GoToWebinar for us. And we definitely invite you to ask those in the questions box. What I'd like to do for today's call is to walk through a little bit of the presentation, which will probably take about 20-25 minutes, and then address some questions at the end if there are any, and open it up at that point. If we can't get to everyone's questions during the call today, we'll be sure to follow up at a later date and address those. So again, talking in IMPLAN and what's brought us here today is really looking at, when running an economic impact analysis, how can we look at some of these business tax impacts, particularly at the indirect level, and then also look at induced effects of taxes, looking at the household level there. We'll look at how to run a contribution analysis in IMPLAN, which I'll talk about in a second on why we would want to do that. And then looking at the interpretation of those direct, indirect, and induced tax results, and really how to present these in a report. That last bullet point, we'll look at a couple examples that have been done using IMPLAN on how to look at some tax impact data. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to actually go ahead and get started by going into IMPLAN itself. What I have pulled up right here is our data library product. And today I'm going to be looking at maybe some more intermediate or even advanced features of IMPLAN. We'll be sure to look at some or send out some source material talking about different topics that I'm going to address today. The first one being data library. We've done a great webinar on data library talking about the data that's in here. But some of the data that's in here is information we'll find for establishments by CEW data, really by NAICS code, for these different areas throughout the country, which we'll be looking at some county data. Here I have Boone County, Kentucky pulled up. The reason I've done this is that if I look here, in today's example, I'm going to be talking about Givaudan Flavors Corp., which is a syrup manufacturer in Florence, Kentucky. And I'm going to run through them as an example here. This is some information that was published from the Kentucky Business Development entity. And looking at them, we can see that we have a NAICS code for them of 311930. That's their North American Industry Classification System code. And they're operating out of Florence, Kentucky, which is in Boone County there. So going back over to IMPLAN, let's take a look at what we can learn a little bit on in data library, just as kind of a high level view. I'll go down and scroll down here to this table talking about flavoring, syrup, and concentrate manufacturing. That's that NAICS code I just referenced. We can see here it looks like an establishment moved in there in about 4, and scrolling across the top here, which I'll do and then stop maybe on 2021, which is our latest data there. We can see that that remains pretty much the same of about 1 throughout the years. And we'll look at them as an example for a contribution analysis here. When I go over to this next tab, here I have a project pulled up in IMPLAN. I've gone ahead and made a contribution analysis event. And a contribution analysis is an event that we have here at IMPLAN. Also done a great webinar talking about this, and we have a lot of great information on our help and support site, which will send us follow-up to all the attendees on the call here. But for today's call, just understand that a contribution analysis is looking at a business as they existed in a region in the past. So in this case, I just saw that it was located in Boone County. They're the only establishment industry 100, which is the flavoring, syrup, and concentrate manufacturing industry. And I've set my value to 100%. That's just me saying I want to understand the contribution that they have in my local region. And I've selected that to Boone County, but I've also done something where I've made another group called Kentucky minus Boone County. This is making use of something we call our multi-regional input-output analysis. And MRIO is another great feature of IMPLAN that we've done some webinars on and some videos on that we'll send out. But really what this is doing is saying, can you show me what the impact of this business is, not only in Boone County, but also the rest of the state of Kentucky? And why I would want to do this is perhaps my client has engaged me to say, we want to understand what our contribution is. And again, talking specifically on this call today, we want to understand what our tax result and really our fiscal impact is to the community that we serve. So let's go ahead and look at the results of this analysis that I ran earlier. See some of the results of what we could expect from an analysis like this. Now, again, if I was working with this client and had gone ahead and set up a call with them to understand their tax results, I probably have a very good idea of what they are directly paying. If I've engaged this business and I'm working on behalf of them to understand their tax results, that direct tax impact is going to be what my directly impacted business, in this case for a contribution analysis, is supporting in the local economy by a couple different levels of government. And let's talk a little bit about what those levels of government are, because this is important when we talk about which entity is collecting tax here. The different levels that we have, and I'll say these and then we'll walk through some of them. The first one's going to be our federal taxes. So these are taxes collected by the United States government in this case. We have our state taxes, which in this case, because I've used regions in Kentucky, that's going to be the state government of Kentucky. Come down further, which we'll be able to isolate in a moment, but this is going to be our county tax table. These are the county taxes paid to Boone County in Kentucky there. We have our sub-county special district levels, which these are going to be police, school, fire district taxes. And then at the very bottom, we have our sub-county general or municipality taxes in our area. So these are the different levels of government actors that are collecting taxes, and really that we're supporting taxes in our analysis. But on this call, what we really want to be looking at is, what does all this information mean? Well, in my analysis, I've already built out two different regions here. The regions I used were Boone County and really Kentucky minus Boone County, or the rest of the state of Kentucky. Well, let's say that we first want to look at that Boone County local impact, because maybe I'm trying to have the Boone County Economic Development Council or the city of Florence really understand what this manufacturer means in terms of taxes for the region. The three different tax types, which we covered at the beginning of the call, but to go over them again, they're the direct, indirect, and induced. Well, the direct tax, if I pick this only, this direct tax impact of my directly impacted business in this case, this is going to be what IMPLAN's estimate is for what they're paying in direct taxes. Now, I say estimate because this is a direct estimate. If I was working directly with this company, I wouldn't want to use IMPLAN's estimate here, and I probably would want to exclude that out of my analysis and only start looking at some of these indirect and induced impacts, and I'll explain why that is. Let's start by looking at the indirect taxes here and understand what they are. Indirect impacts in IMPLAN are from all the business-to-business transactions that are occurring because of my directly impacted business. So an example of this might be our business is paying part of their power bill, or maybe they're paying rent, or maybe they're paying a staffing company to source the employees that work there at the factory. These indirect taxes are beyond our direct tax impact, and are certainly something we should consider as part of our analysis. So if I've selected Boone County as my analysis region, and I come down to my county tax table, these are what all of the suppliers to my business are paying in county taxes, and that number's down here at the bottom right, annually because of my operations, my direct operations. If my business were to potentially move, or this factory were to shut down and stop operating in the county, this might be a loss of $250,000 of county taxes supported in this case. Similarly, if I look at only my induced taxes, the induced taxes in IMPLAN are from households, their paychecks that they're earning directly or indirectly at local businesses within the county. These would be people paying sales tax at the grocery store, or when they buy clothes for their family at retail clothing stores, they're paying local sales tax at the county level. Even seeing some county income tax of our higher earning individuals here, county tax table right here. This induced piece, that $80,000 of county taxes right there, that's the amount that could potentially not be supported if all of these individuals weren't working there anymore. This is an extremely important piece to include when looking at an analysis for understanding their tax impact. And many times, what we'll see here is if I'm working directly on behalf of a business, I can include their direct taxes on my own estimate that I've come up with and really worked with them to get, but then use IMPLAN's indirect tax impacts to show that $330,000 of county taxes at that bottom right, that's the additional amount of county would be potentially if this business were to stop operating in the area, whether it be leaving or include this in a report in IMPLAN as well. This can absolutely be downloaded out into a couple different file formats. Excel is certainly the most common, and we could do that there. Now, I've been focusing a lot on the county tax impacts, but sometimes if our business is large enough and has maybe a larger impact in the area, we may want to know what the impact rest of the state of Kentucky. That's that second region that I put in there as part of this multi-regional input-output analysis that I've done. only induced and indirect impacts here, but maybe I want to understand to the state of Kentucky what my indirect impacts are to the rest of the state. So these are areas outside of Boone County. We can see about $1.5 million there. If I even include the state taxes collected in the region of Boone County now, I can now see the total state tax, again, state being the state government of Kentucky collecting taxes here. I can see them, what the potential tax impact would be if this business were to not be operating here anymore. And this is in addition to that direct tax estimate that I would work with them to understand. This is obviously a very key point. A lot of times we would look at employment numbers, and that's certainly something to consider, but the fiscal impact and understanding those supporting businesses and those folks who are a paycheck and spending it in the local economy, this is where really a large piece of impact can be happening. And it's really important to include, because when we talk about a business operating, a business within an industry does not operate in a vacuum. If they leave, it's not just their direct tax money, where if you're working with them, you can ask them, how much did you pay in state property tax last year? That's the kind of the basic level of economic impact and fiscal impact, really. Looking and understanding the direct or the induced and indirect impacts here, that's what's going to tell our total impact when we want to present these to an entity. Now, we've been talking about really a contribution analysis, so we haven't been adding anything new, but let's look at another project here. And I have another one pulled up here, which is this same company we were looking at in Florence, Kentucky, which is in Boone County. What if they were considering moving across the state line into Cincinnati or within Hamilton County here? That's what I've pulled up right here. I've gone ahead and made a construction event talking about what if they were to go build a new syrup manufacturing facility and invest in leaving Boone County, again, moving across the state line into Ohio. What would that mean to Hamilton County, Ohio here? What would that mean to the local area? I've put in my construction event into Hamilton County, and I've also put another operations event of that output into Hamilton County for 2024, a speculative estimate on how to build a $700 million manufacturing facility. But for this example, let's take a look at the results. Now, why we would want to do this is perhaps we were looking to Hamilton County as a new area to move. And I'll go into the tax results here. See the same information that we were looking at before. So here I can see my federal taxes, my state taxes, and if I come down further, look at my county tax. This is where I'll see my total county tax impact of the construction and operation, my potential move across the state border. This might be a very good piece of negotiating if I was to go over to maybe the Hamilton County Economic Development Council or the city of Cincinnati and ask for a financial incentive package over to a new region. Going in and looking at the different events that I've run, I have the facility construction and the operations here to choose from. Let's take a look at the operations, because this would be more of our ongoing annual fees. And this will be really annual operation will be really key when we take a look at some example reports of how people are interpreting such results and really what they can sort of mean in the region. So these county taxes, say Hamilton, Ohio in this case, because we're looking at this expansion project, about 2.1 of total taxes. But again, because I'm working on understanding this directly impacted business moving to the area, and I might be trying to engage the city of Cincinnati or Hamilton County to really figure out a direct tax package that I'd be paying, I might want to go ahead and look at only direct and induced taxes. And indirect and induced taxes here was what those facility operations will be the same way we were looking before at our contribution analysis. So the indirect taxes here would be all of those indirectly supported businesses that are paying taxes now to Hamilton County, moving across the area. I can see the induced taxes as well. Same thing of my new employees that are
Andrew, we're not hearing you. We seem to have lost sound on your end. Sorry about that, everyone. We're having a little technical difficulties here.
some example reports. Let's pull some up here and take a look through at how people will sometimes and even oftentimes report analyses in IMPLAN. So
Hey,
here's
Andrew,
an
we lost you for
example
the past
of
minute
an
or so.
analysis. Oh, okay, sure thing. Sorry about
So
that.
you could go back just a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for letting me know there, Candy. Yeah, so what I was saying here is really looking at operations of the business in Hamilton County, Ohio, in this case, our potential move here. When we look at county tax impacts, we have county taxes for indirect and induced impacts. That would be a very, very key point if we're going to go and look at county taxes and look in the city of Cincinnati or even Hamilton County here, understanding what direct and induced would be of our potential move. Now, any related to direct taxes that would be paid by our business moving would be in addition to this indirect and induced impact. That's what we're seeing right here. So understanding how that can work from moving into an area is certainly how that can work there. So I'll go ahead and share some reports right now is what I'd like to do and talk about a little bit on how people use this data out of IMPLAN and worth something instead of looking at it in there with large amounts of tables and maybe bringing some life to these data points that we can see here. Now, it's important to remember before we look through here is IMPLAN is not a crystal ball that will tell you down to the cent of how much tax will be supported in an area. It is an economic and fiscal impact model based on static linear input-output modeling. It uses data to come up with these estimates. It is not a set in stone number, but let's see how some people have been reporting this. This is a project right here that was done for Orlando, the city of Orlando, and it was looking at going through a lot of improvements in the area, and the Orlando economic partners being engaged to start looking at a NASA community planning annex partnership. There was a lot of CapEx that was being proposed here, some garages that were built for an urban air mobility project through NASA, looking for buy-in from the local area. IMPLAN here, looking at the different fiscal impacts, and in this case, looking to the city of Orlando and Orange County. And a key takeaway of this analysis was here looking and seeing that the potential costs here, they're looking at the revenue associated with this project to the city. Now, I'm not here to look at the really how this analysis would have been completed in IMPLAN. That'd be something we would certainly love to talk to you if there's a project in mind that you'd like to talk about. I'm talking.
Andrew, I think we've
About here
lost
is
you
that this is a
again.
very key point in including in an analysis to a county economic development. Oh, sure thing. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we've got you back now.
I see. Oh, okay. Perfect. Well, yeah, what I was saying in here is really this, that, this analysis that was done for the city of Orlando and the Orlando Economic Development Council was really looking at a key takeaway from the analysis was looking at the fiscal impact, particularly the tax revenue over, in this case, a 20-year period. But this is a very key point of this analysis that was done on proposed infrastructure improvements in the area. We can see other ways people have presented this kind of information. Analysis is looking at the proposed new bottling facility in Pennsylvania for Nestle. Again, we're seeing coming up using IMPLAN here, looking at state revenue in this case, the direct, indirect, and induced economic impact and fiscal impact really for different types of tax impacts. This is where that data can be taken out of IMPLAN and put into a report that's now used to start talking about some fiscal impacts of projects here. Show two, sometimes they can be more simplistic, looking at the economic impact of agritourism. And this analysis used IMPLAN to look at tax revenues associated with agritourism and present these by those direct, indirect, and induced levels. We can see those right here, which we were looking at before. We saw those in IMPLAN. This table, having this in front of people and being able to present and show them what these direct, indirect, and induced taxes mean to an area is a very, very powerful tool when you're trying to show the fiscal impacts of an industry, policy, or activity. I'll show one final report too. This is actually a draft report of a analysis that's ongoing here, looking at the Palisades nuclear facility being shut down in Michigan. This analysis is looking and really understanding and really, I think, doing a great job of looking at the total fiscal impact that this nuclear facility in Michigan that has very recently been shut down. When looking at the tax impacts in particular, oftentimes people will understand, well, certainly people who are working for the nuclear power generation facility would be earning an income and paying income tax on that. But really what this report does, and does very well, in fact, is looking at those direct, indirect, and induced taxes at these different levels, with the induced being all of those employees that no longer at this nuclear facility don't have an income from the nuclear facility to spend on local clothing stores, grocery stores. And this report aims to show what that means to the local county, the tri-county region, and even the rest of the state of Michigan later on, which is what I was showing in IMPLAN earlier when we were talking about the MRIO, or multi-regional input-output analysis feature of IMPLAN. So again, really powerful tool, understanding these direct, indirect, and induced fiscal impacts. A lot of times when people talk about economic impact analyses and IMPLAN in particular, they really mention a lot of the employment results. So jobs are certainly something that should be considered. They're considered in all of the 4 example analyses that I just put in front of you. However, including the fiscal impact analyses are certainly something that we want to take a look at. So with that, that kind of concludes the presentation piece of this. I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions come up during our presentation there, and maybe we'll go ahead and address some of those.
Thank you so much, Andrew. One big question that people are asking is, where's IMPLAN getting all of these tax rates for all these various entities? So did you want to take that, or do you want me to go ahead and answer it?
Yeah, sure thing. Why don't you go ahead and answer it and maybe give some context there?
Sure, absolutely. So IMPLAN data is all based on data that has been collected from various entities within the federal government. So for our tax data, we have three sources of information that our data team puts together every year. From the Census of Government, the Annual Survey of State and Local Government Finances, and the Annual Survey of State Government Tax Collections. So these are actual values that were collected in that given year by each level of government. What this means is it's not a tax rate that you will see show up in IMPLAN, but instead basically an effective tax rate, saying on average, this is what we expect to see in terms of taxes collected. And that's because we know that some entities are not paying taxes, like nonprofits and state institutions and things like that. So if you reverse the math, you will see that instead of seeing maybe your 10% sales tax rate that you know your region has, what you might see show up in sales tax is like a 9.5%, because again, it's that effective rate. So hopefully that clears things up on what we were talking about there. But if anyone has any further questions, please let us know. We have another question coming in. I'm looking for payroll tax percent of gross hourly wage rate. How do I find it in IMPLAN, and does it change state by state? So again, I'll take this one, Andrew.
Yeah,
we
sure.
don't have, again, that tax percentage. It's again going to be that effective rate, but it should be much closer than, say, a sales tax or a use tax in terms of what actually the rate may be. And what we could look at is the taxes by industry for employee compensation there. And it would, of course, change state by state, as different states have different rates for all of that, as IMPLAN has those 5 different levels of taxation. Our city township tax, our special district, which is police, fire, school districts, county, state, and federal. All right, another question. So then the tax estimates, are calculated by attributing them to certain industries' events based on some proportionality. Then how are those estimates calculated when you're looking at proposed future event in a region that may not have the particular industry that you're testing? So if we have a new industry in a region, then we would most likely recommend borrowing the production function from a region that does have that industry, and looking at the rate of the total output that would be going to taxes in that industry based on what we know about, let's say, a neighboring county that might have that industry.
Yeah, that's right, and very common too. Yep, a lot of times, looking at new industries coming into an area, say, really common one might be solar, electric power generation that might be introduced in an area that doesn't have it, and looking to grow in solar or wind or other types of renewable energy. Very common too, and we have some great support articles on that as well, and that'll be sure to be shared in the follow-up information to all attendees after the call.
All right, next question. Andrew, what does TOPI stand for?
Yeah, sure thing. That is tax on imports. So when looking at IMPLAN, there's a really operates everything behind IMPLAN, and that's going to be output equals the value added plus intermediate inputs. And so that's value added, or the GDP or gross regional product at the subnational level there. The value added is made up of employee compensation, proprietor income, TOPI, tax on production imports, and OPI, or other property income. So yeah, TOPI is a piece of value added there.
Excellent. Can you look at historical tax impacts of a particular tax?
Yeah, certainly. And that's a great use of some of the historic data within IMPLAN. So IMPLAN within our software, we do have the ability to go back to 2001. So we have data going from 2001 to 2021. Uh, Oftentimes, when you're looking at maybe how an industry has changed over time in a region over that 20-year period, doing contribution analyses for those previous years, just like I showed today on the call with the 2021 data, can be a great way to understand tax impacts in the past.
Fantastic. All right. Sorry, these keep popping up. Do you have any tax data on Puerto Rico or just the 50 states?
We do have currently a model for Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, the tax data there is not necessarily as granular within IMPLAN, and the reason for that is because we do have a model for Puerto Rico only, as in the territory. We don't have sub-territory data for Puerto Rico at this time.
All right. Does the effective rate vary by use type? Some places have different tax rates for residential versus commercial property.
Yeah, so again, within IMPLAN, as Candy was saying before, there aren't tax rates within IMPLAN. This is based on really previous years' effective tax, if you could put it that way, of tax data collected, and IMPLAN's using ratios for the different industries here. So again, the rates aren't being used for these different regions. Rather, it's historic tax collected.
Okay. I think we have time for a couple more questions here. I think that you addressed this, but since some hospitals are nonprofit and others are for-profit, does that mean that IMPLAN is going to use some type of blended property tax rate when modeling the opening of a new hospital?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we actually have a fantastic article on our help and support site talking about nonprofits and tax-exempt organizations. With IMPLAN, you do have a blended nonprofit versus profit tax that comes out on the results. However, looking at modeling a nonprofit hospital is certainly something you can do, which our help and support site on our website talks about, which maybe we can share a link out for that. But yeah, basically zeroing out the taxes paid by the hospital directly, but definitely looking at the indirect and induced taxes of their supporting businesses, and then their employees spending that paycheck in the local economy. These employees still have to pay sales tax when you buy a shirt, whether you earned your income from a nonprofit or a profit company. So yeah, those kind of tax impacts are also a group of what I just went over today.
Great. Can you please describe the sub-county taxes? Are these for cities and school districts?
Yeah, definitely. So IMPLAN has a couple different sub county regions within our tax results. So those are going to be the sub county general. So those are municipality taxes or city taxes collected there. We have the sub county special district, which is its own table, as we saw today, which is going to include police, school, fire district, special district taxes there. And then we also have the county taxes collected there by itself. So yep, we do have that special district level in the taxes.
Okay, great. How are severance and ad valorem taxes on minerals estimated?
That
Again,
is a good
this
question.
is this is going to go back to the fact that we're not measuring any kind of tax rate or anything like that. It's going to be based on what was actually collected. You do see severance tax show up in the state, county, and sub-county general, which is the city township tax. That would be pieces of these severance taxes. So it will show up in the data, but that's just coming from one of those data sources. And I think other than a couple really specific questions, I think we have covered them all. So Andrew, any final words for us today?
Yeah, no, I just want to again appreciate everyone for attending the call, and really, like Candy said, it's difficult to give a presentation on every specific type of project that you can run in plan. There's a lot of different types of projects, things like tourism events that we didn't really get to cover today. Really pretty focused on business operations and new into areas. But if you're looking to talk about a specific project that you'd want to see how IMPLAN can run through, and really look at maybe more personalized demonstration of what the software can do, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to set that up. That's free to take advantage of. So definitely would recommend that if you have a project that you want to talk a little bit more specifically.
Fantastic.
But
And any questions that we didn't fully answer while we had you today, you will get an email following up with some additional resources specific to those more detailed questions that were asked. So again, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a wonderful week.
yeah, thanks again, everyone. Take care.